The Dallas Mavericks, in my opinion at least, hit a home run this trade deadline by acquiring Nerlens Noel from the Philadelphia 76ers for basically a bag of chips. It was Justin Anderson and a first-round pick that's going to turn into 2 second-round picks. Justin Anderson was a defensive player who might not have any offensive game to him. And then 2 second-round picks, I mean, those could become something, but for Nerlens Noel, I think it's worth it. And, I mean, I've been a pretty decent fan of Nerlens for a while now. I feel like he's never gotten the real opportunity, either because he's playing behind Joel Embiid or he's just not on a very good roster overall with the Philadelphia 76ers. He goes to a team now with the Mavericks that has some actual NBA players around him, as well as some nice young players in Harrison Barnes and Yogi Ferrell, and a high draft pick this season, as well as a front office that knows what it's doing. I think the Mavericks could actually be primed for a really strong rebuild. And let's talk about Nerlens first. Some people were saying, well, you shouldn't get him because he's got restricted free agency coming up. You're going to have to pay him like $20 million. I mean, for the Mavericks, given the situation they're in, where they're going to be, towards the bottom of the league, looking to improve and be young, I think this is a very good move. And if we talk about Nerlens, I mean, first and foremost, the athleticism stands out. He's a guy who can be super effective, if I can get my Pokemon on, when it comes to transition. He can outrun the majority of NBA centers and a decent amount of power forwards, I would imagine, as well. Just going laterally up and down the floor. That allows him to get back on defense frequently. It allows him to get a lot of transition buckets. And then that athleticism also allows him to be a terror on defense. I think he has potential to really be one of the 5 best defensive players in the NBA because his natural instincts defensively are very good in terms of, like, if you ask him to step up on a point guard in a pick and roll, if you want him to help when someone's coming along the baseline, if you need him to just kind of protect the rim or contest a drive and then be immediately able to change direction if it's like a dump-off pass. Nerlens can do all those things very well. He also can switch depending on the matchup. I think he can just be an awesome defensive player. And then, of course, it doesn't hurt when you can move as quickly and jump as high as he can. That also allows him to catch a lot of alley-oops. And the Sixers didn't really have a lot of point guards who could really make those sort of plays. They had Ish Smith for like a moment. You go to the Mavericks now, and I'm going to talk about Yogi Ferrell a little bit more. But, I mean, he can make a pass. Seth Curry is someone who demands attention from the defense, as well as Rick Carlisle having an awesome offensive system. I think Nerlens is going to get a lot of opportunities for open looks, for alley-oops, things like that. But we can also talk about Nerlens' offensive game a little bit more, too. He's progressing. His mid-range jumper, I saw a stat on Twitter. He's 12 for 30 for mid-range this season at 40%. That shows me that he's been working on that jumper, and he's actually at a point now where if you leave him wide open, there is a chance that it will go in. And if he can maintain that and build up that reputation in the NBA, then defenses are going to have to start paying attention to him when he's standing from about 15 feet away from the basket, and that gives you more options as an offense. I mean, they can't just let him hang around out there and then pack the paint when someone like a Harrison Barnes is attacking inside. And if they do that, well, then he can kick it out to Nerlens, and, Nerlens can do good things. So that's a huge look for him. He's also shooting around 70% at the basket, and that attributes to his ability to catch a lob as well as roll to the basket really well. So if he's attacking the basket well and he's hitting mid-range and he's grabbing about 2 offensive rebounds a game, which he's done for the majority of his career. This season he's at 1.5 offensive boards, but he was also playing behind Embiid and he's also coming back from injury, so he's grabbing offensive rebounds too. And it should be said, he's actually gotten his free throw percentage up to 68% this year. So he could become an above 70% free throw shooter, grab offensive rebounds, finish at the rim, hit mid-range jumpers. That's good enough offensively for what Nerlens does on defense and with his athleticism. So he could really grow into a complete player, and the Mavericks have him at the age of 22 years old, playing full-time at the center position. I think they really hit a home run with acquiring Nerlens. I'm pretty upset that my Celtics didn't get him. But of course, there is more to this team. We can talk about Harrison Barnes. I think a lot of us were pretty surprised to see his improvement this season, going from a guy in Golden State who pretty much just chilled in the corner a lot of times and just allowed Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond to do their thing, and he was the recipient of a lot of open passes. He did do some work in the low post, but he comes over to Dallas, and he's been a real creator with the basketball, whether it be isolations. I mean, there have been times when he's just gone one-on-one with NBA defenders, and he's been able to beat them off the dribble and get to the rim. He has a very good mid-range game. He's pretty crafty when it comes to like step backs and turnaround jumpers, things like that. I mean, Barnes is shooting 42% from mid-range on nearly 400 attempts this year, so it's definitely a go-to area for him, and he's been pretty okay. I remember a game against the Celtics, he hit like 5 or 6 mid-range jumpers in a row in isolations, like late in the game. Now, the three-pointers have been a little down. He's at 34%, slightly under league average. That's not surprising, given that he's no longer on the Warriors and he has to just do more offensively. Hopefully he can creep up a little bit more there, but Barnes has definitely been good. I mean, he can attack, he can ISO, he can post up, which I should mention. I also like with him, given that he's in Rick Carlisle's offense, he gets opportunities to like cut to the basket and come around screens. And I really think you could run any sort of play for him given his size. And the question is, can Barnes really be like a big-time scorer? I mean, he's up to 20 points a game this season, shooting 47%. I don't know. Is he hit his ceiling just yet? Could Harrison Barnes be thought of as one of the 20 best players in the league? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see on that one. But, I mean, he might be the centerpiece of the Mavericks rebuild as we move forward here. He's only 24, and he's being asked to do a lot more, and he's doing well, so who knows? He's also a damn good defensive player, and I think he, as well as Nerlens Noel together, could be the backbone of a really strong defensive team. I do want Barnes to get better when it comes to playmaking. He only averages 1.5 assists, which is not much. Rick Carlisle's system calls for a lot of ball movement. Not one guy is really dribbling too much, but I do think we could see Barnes just hopefully being a better playmaker. Then we got to talk about Yogi Ferrell, who, I mean, I don't know how good he really is because he's kind of come out of nowhere here, but he's definitely had a good stretch. I mean, right now, 14 points, 5 assists, 45 from the field, 46 from 3. And that's the big one for me, the 46% from 3. I mean, if you're a guy who can create your own shot and be that good from outside, there's a chance you're going to put up a lot of points. He's also not afraid to attack the basket, even though he's, kind of short. He's on the Isaiah Thomas side of things. So if he's fearless going inside, he can hit threes, and he's also shown some life with his pull-up jumpers, then yeah, I think Yogi could definitely be an offensive option. Will he ever be anything on defense? Maybe not, but once again, with Nerlens and Barnes, you're definitely still going in the right direction on defense, in my opinion. How good is Yogi? Who knows, man? I mean, Rick Carlisle's system, if you can shoot and dribble like he can, you can definitely do some things. I mean, we saw what he's done for Harrison Barnes this season. So I think Yogi can be good. In the case of Dirk, I mean, he's not a bad piece to still have, even if he's not going to be the franchise player anymore. Can be a nice 15-point scorer. Maybe his game translates to him playing even past this season. I don't know. But, Dirk's still there. Good guy. And then we should also talk about their upcoming first-round pick, which is going to be top 10, probably. As for what position they really go in, I don't know. I mean, I would think you're pretty good on the small forward and the center department, and you could make the argument that Yogi's good for the point guard spot, but there's a lot of point guards coming in this draft, and if you think one of them can really be like a franchise player, then you go with them. But there's definitely a need at the shooting guard and power forward positions for just some effective two-way players. I mean, Wesley Matthews' offense has come around lately, but given that Achilles injury, I don't know if he's ever going to be the defensive player that he once was, which was, one of the better defensive perimeter guys in the NBA, which is too bad there. And then Dirk, I mean, Dirk's basically stuck in quicksand when it comes to defense at this point. If they could find a real, defensive two-way power forward, maybe Dirk could play even longer and come off the bench as an offensive option. It's an idea. I don't know. But I do think this team is in a pretty damn good spot when it comes to rebuilding. It should be said that their cap space is going to be pretty slim over the next couple of years, depending on what happens with Dirk, and given that they're going to have to throw a bunch of money at Nerlens. But given that they're not a good team, and they're going to have young guys who can seemingly get better with Barnes and Noel and Ferrell and their draft pick this season, I don't know if it's the worst thing in the world. Also, once Dirk is gone, you're definitely going to have the money in the books, so, I mean, there's that for you. They're also going to have to come to a decision on Seth Curry. He's been a nice offensive option for him, man. He's basically his brother, just not as good. Although I do think there's a little bit more off-ball action with Seth, or he relies on it a little bit more. He's been a nice double-digit scorer this season from 3. He's got about 2 years left, and if he continues where he's at now, he would probably command at least like $12 or $13 million in the open market. They're going to have to see if they really want him, but regardless, young team, very good front office that knows what it's doing, the second best head coach in the NBA in Rick Carlisle. They just had a great deadline move with Nerlens Noel. I like the young guys on their roster. They have the high pick coming up. I think the Mavericks are in a really good spot to have an exciting and entertaining rebuild.